I can't believe it has taken till now for me to get around to reviewing Goodfellas. But there you go. It's it's one of those films that's almost monolithic at this point. Everybody kind of seems to love it. It's highly regarded as an absolute classic. Most people seem to think it's Scorsese's best film. I slightly disagree there, but it's one of those films that seems untouchable, and I rarely seem to come across anyone, if ever, who would say that they don't like it. For a lot of people, this should have picked up Best Picture in 1991, but that was actually given to Dances with Wolves. And yeah, I personally would still go with Dances with Wolves. That's just me. I'm a big fan of that film. I really gravitate towards the central character and his story. This is, I would say, I wouldn't say it's style over substance, but the style at times certainly does run away with itself. Scorsese's always moving the camera. He's doing like weird kind of editing tricks where he'll just stop mid-editing to freeze frame on something, and it's very kinetic. There's always movement going on. If the characters aren't moving, then the camera is. And it's like that non-stop for the 2.5 hour running time. What that does is it really pulls you in to Ray Liotta's character's story. Henry Hill, he's the central character, the one we follow. It's his voiceover that runs through the film. Like I say, because it's just constant movement. The camera's always going, it's always following this guy. You don't have a chance to breathe. So you're just with this guy. You're like by his side, going through what he goes through, and he's giving you a tour, a guided tour, essentially through the world of the gangster. The film opens up with this sequence that, on one hand, is quite amusing because these guys are just talking like regular Joes, and there's like something going on in the boot, and that turns out to be a man. It turns out to be a guy who, very shortly afterwards gets brutally murdered by them. But it sets up the stall for what this film is essentially going to be about, which is a brotherhood, really, of these characters who feel a certain sense of loyalty to each other, but who really, when you think about it, exist in a world that no one should ever really want to be a part of. In that sequence, during the voiceover, we have Henry Hill explaining how, it's that famous line, "Ever since I could remember, I wanted to be a gangster." And for me, that line is, it's a stamp that would suggest the film is going to show us why that would be. Ever since he can remember, he wanted to be a gangster. Okay, show us why. But then the film proceeds to show us a billion different reasons as to why nobody in their right mind would ever want to be a gangster. The behaviours of these people, what they go through, the threats to their lives, and that's just from their supposed friends. I don't know about you, but it would put me on edge. That living with what these guys have to live with, it would put me on edge. Despite the riches, despite the women, despite, the fame on a certain level, they walk through the streets of their neighbourhood, people know who they are. They salute them, essentially. They open doors for them. And while that, would be quite enticing, I guess, when you look at the flip side of what they've got to deal with, getting stabbed in the back by friends, being bumped off for any stupid decision at any point, I would just be looking over my shoulder all my life. I would be tense. I would be scared of not bringing in the correct payment that I should be bringing in from my end, and I think the film really impresses that upon us as an audience. I think to a large degree that's the point. We open up the film with this statement that suggests the life these guys lead is glamorous in some way, that it's something that everybody would want a piece of. But then the film goes about showing us all the horrific ways in which actually, no, I'm okay living my white middle class kind of lifestyle, thank you very much. Going through these mob movies, these gangster movies that I've been going through recently, one of the patterns within them that kind of just makes me pull away, I guess, is the fact that they're often quite depressing. It's bad people making bad choices, doing bad things to one another, and that's kind of it. I recently reviewed Menace to Society, and that was just so depressing. Now, there's a huge element of that here, and yet it doesn't quite leave you feeling as down in the dumps as those other films do, because of the way that Scorsese directs it, because of the way it's scripted. There's a certain comedic element to the way these guys are presented, to how they operate. We hear it in Henry Hill's voiceover as well at times, and particularly when we get to the final third act, in which Henry Hill is on this kind of coke-fueled stress binge. Like it really brings things to the fore of just how stressful the lifestyle is when he's trying to do all these different things. He's got all these balls in the air. He's juggling them and he's trying to keep them all up at once, and he's just moving from one thing to the next. He's on coke because that's the only way he can get through all this stuff, quite frankly, and keep going. That's how bad it's gotten for him. But it's funny. It's humorous. He's checking out the car for a helicopter that he thinks is following him. And then his wife joins in and she's looking. And the way that plays, because he's coked off his head, and the way it's edited, it's funny. It's entertaining. Again, you never at any point feel like you'd want to be this guy. But it's kind of amusing seeing his life eventually go down the toilet because of the decisions he's made. It's a poetic justice to a large degree. It is one of those films that says that crime doesn't pay, or at least crime might pay for a time, but eventually you are going to find yourself either in prison or on the receiving end of a bullet or whatever. Ultimately, it's not going to pay in the end. I actually think Ray Liotta is the standout throughout this film. I know he's the main character, so it's a good thing that he's a standout. But a lot of people talk up Joe Pesci, and I can understand why. He has a very memorable role in this film, a role that he would essentially repeat, I think, in Casino. But I just think the way that Liotta reacts to things throughout this film is the primary thing that kind of keeps me entertained. Even you think about the famous sequence with Joe Pesci's character when he's like, "What? I amuse you? You think I'm funny? Funny how?" That kind of scene. That's a scary scene. The way it plays out, the way that Pesci's character just flips on a dime, and you're suddenly kind of faced with this psychopathic guy who could shiv you at any moment. I'm actually watching Liotta in that scene, the way he's reacting, because I think his reaction to what is going on there is just as equally great as what Pesci is doing. And I think sometimes that doesn't get called out, just how good Liotta is in this movie. Just the way he laughs in the film as well actually cracks me up. The things that he's laughing at are not funny. They're the kind of thing that make me go like, yeah, you guys need help. You need professional help. Again, it's that whole thing of the world of a gangster is not that glamorous to me. It's not something I'd want to be a part of. It's not something I can identify with. But in these exchanges, a lot of these exchanges, I'm entertained. I laugh because of what Liotta's doing, the way he laughs and whatnot. It's kind of infectious. It's over the top. It's ridiculous, but in just the right way. It's perfectly calibrated. It's actually Robert De Niro who gets top billing in the film, and yet of the three leads, he's the one that to me is the least memorable. He doesn't do that much in the first half of the movie. And yeah, like I said, there's not a right lot I can remember. I walk away from it, it's a couple of days ago now, a few days ago when I watched it, and honestly, I don't remember that much that De Niro did character-wise. Whereas, yeah, you know, there's plenty of sequences with Liotta and with Pesci that I can remember, which I still find entertaining. And of course, that's not a diss on Robert De Niro. He's a fantastic actor. I just think the way the script is written, what it offers him as an actor, yeah, he doesn't get as much as the other two. Another aspect of this movie which I kind of like, which has often pulled down other movies that, you know, within the genre, is the fact that the wife character, played by Lorraine Bracco, Henry Hill's wife, she's in on it. She's given ample opportunity, I think, in the start of the film. When she first meets Henry, she's given ample opportunity to say, okay, I know what your life is, I know who you are, I don't want to be a part of it. But she chooses to be a part of it. She makes her own bed, essentially. So as the film goes on and things start happening to her and her life starts unraveling and falling apart, I don't feel that much sympathy towards her. And it's that notion that the film is dealing with, that, you know, if you choose this lifestyle, it's only going to end one way. You get what you deserve, essentially. Whereas, like, in other movies, it's often been like the female characters, the wife characters, the girlfriend characters who are treated badly, but they didn't really want to be a part of that lifestyle. They didn't choose it. You know, it kind of crept up on them to a large degree. And then when they're treated in a horrible way, like, I think of, again, Once Upon a Time in America, which I reviewed, didn't like that film. There's a female character in that who is treated appallingly, and it's just like, hey, that's just the life. And it's like, well, no, actually, what I didn't know what I was supposed to feel walking away from that, other than just repulsion, and it just took me out of the movie. Whereas here, yeah, some bad stuff happens to the wife character, Henry Hill's wife character. But when you look at it, she brought it all upon herself by the choices she made. She's just as guilty, in effect, as her husband. I'm not one for voiceover in movies. I think generally they don't tend to work. They just tell us things that we should be seeing. Whereas Goodfellas is one of the few films where the voiceover actually does work. You never feel like something's being forsaken at the expense of being told it through the voiceover. The two are just melded together so brilliantly. Often a voiceover will be used and it will tell us something that, like, you could do away with the images that are playing underneath, and the voiceover tells us everything we need to know. And it's like, okay, then we shouldn't have had that voiceover. You should have told us that information. You should have shown us that information through the images that are playing on screen. Whereas that's not the way it plays here in Goodfellas. It complements the images to such an extent that it fills in gaps and helps those images say more than what they might. But yeah, like I say, if you take away the images, again, the voiceover, it's not enough on its own. So the two of them together make the complete picture. So Goodfellas is it's a very well made film from a technical standpoint. It's brilliantly directed. It's highly entertaining. It's got some really great characters in it, in the sense that, like, they're great in the sense that, like, you feel engaged watching them. But for me, I would say the one thing that stops it being like a 5-star classic for me personally, and I know this is only a problem that seemingly I deal with, is there isn't really a character in there that I can relate to, in the sense that I root for them, or you know. And I know not every film has to have that. It's just it's a choice. It's a choice as to what you're saying with your movie. And I think that the characters that are on display here are perfect for the message that Scorsese is trying to articulate, which is that, you know, this isn't a lifestyle anyone should, you know, really want if they're actually thinking with two brain cells. But at the end of the day, it still leaves us with a bunch of characters who I kind of want to distance myself from. I wouldn't want to hang around with these people. I wouldn't want to call them friends. I'm happy to watch them from a distance in a movie and be entertained by their shenanigans and live the gangster lifestyle vicariously through them. But ultimately, I wouldn't want to partake in anything that they're doing. Like I said, I go to Dances with Wolves, the film that won Best Picture over Goodfellas. And the reason that for me just grabs me that little bit more is because I do like the central character. I could follow him. I could be on his side. I could call him friend. Goodfellas, fantastic movie. I understand why people give it 5 stars. If that element I've just talked about doesn't really bother them, I totally understand why it's a 5-star movie for them. But just for me personally, that's the thing that just holds it back. How do you feel about Goodfellas? Do you think it should have won the Best Picture Oscar back in '91? Or like me, are you happy that Dances with Wolves took it? Please leave your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you for watching this review, and until next time, cracking.